Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about sexual assault awareness and survivor advocacy. I'm grateful to welcome special guest Jenna Ashlyn. Jenna is an award-winning author and survivor advocate. You can learn more about Jenna and her books on her Amazon author page. And you can also reach her on social media, and I'll include those links in the description. Welcome, Jenna. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. How's your day going so far?
Oh, it's been lovely. It's been a lovely day. Well, I want to, if it's okay, let's kind of start with your story. First of all, I am so proud of you for being able to escape an abusive relationship. And that is so much harder than it sounds. And I think that's where we'd like to go today, to be able to help increase awareness, help people be able to understand why it's hard, and then to be able to empower people who are in those circumstances to get out. So can we start with your story?
Well, my story began, unfortunately, I became a widow at the age of 30.
Whoa.
And yeah, that was awful. And that's kind of how it began. That wasn't even the worst part, although it stuck with me for years. And but I didn't really get the chance to wait years to heal. Unfortunately, it kind of started a domino effect of events that wasn't great because for some reason guys were just kind of coming out of the woodwork and they were hitting on me, and my mind was not in the right place. So I went looking for, a guy friend to kind of help deflect that a little bit so I could feel a little bit safe, just somebody that I could talk to and that I could lean on. And this guy does show up, and at first he's great. He's very, compassionate and is very understanding whenever I say that, hey, I'm not ready for a relationship. And then he started pushing. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, he seems like a really good guy. I shouldn't let him go. So weeks or months later, I don't remember which for sure, I eventually kind of gave in. And it was the same thing whenever he started telling me he loved me. I'm like, well, really ready to say anything like that yet. Eventually, he wore me down. And over time, this really great guy that I thought that I should give a chance to started to turn into something different. And after a little while, I wasn't really allowed to talk about my husband that had died, and I wasn't allowed to mourn him the way that I needed to, because he would get really jealous and he would get disappointed and upset. So I had to start getting quiet, and that's when I started writing. That's actually, I started kind of writing out what had happened, and that was my way of coping. And I kind of created this world of all the things that I should have done. Well, it took me about 4 or 5 years to really start to heal up and to be able to feel different emotions and stuff again, because I was completely shut down. And then whenever I did wake up, I was in the midst of this battle with this man who I'd felt very pressured into marrying. And I started to slowly become aware that things were not as they seemed. And he was very manipulative. He made me feel like I was crazy. And that's kind of just the beginning of things that it just got steadily worse from there.
So this situation, was it mostly just mental and emotional abuse then, not physical, not anything like that?
There was a lot of sexual abuse that started happening.
Okay.
Whenever I would say no to doing certain acts, he wouldn't let me. He would just kind of shove me back down, or he would beg until I gave in. There was a lot of manipulation and coercion. A lot of times I was put in positions where it wasn't safe to say no. And And that became, the sexual assault and the manipulation and coercion started to get more and more physical, to the point where he actually broke a metal bed frame in half. And there's holes in like my bathroom door, things like that.
Okay. So, horrible situation. And at what point did you realize, I don't need this? I can get out of this?
It took me a long time to figure out how to get out of it, but I think one of my biggest moments was whenever my youngest daughter, she was about 8 or 9 years old at the time, I was tucking her into bed one night and she said, "Mommy, I want a new daddy."
Oh.
And that's when I knew that it wasn't just affecting me. It was affecting all three of my kids because she was kind of the spokesperson. She's the youngest, but she was kind of like the level-headed, very giving, very loving, empathetic little girl. And she's telling me she wants a new daddy. And, at that point, I'm like, how am I supposed to do that? And then that kind of got the ball rolling as I slowly started to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to be able to take care of me and the kids? I had went from living in subsidized housing to renting a place, and then eventually buying a home. And he wasn't working. It was me who was doing all the supporting in the marriage. And he kept saying that he was disabled and that he couldn't, but really I knew that he could because he had like a lot of social anxiety and things like that. And anytime that I would bring it up, it would be, how dare you suggest that I get a job? You know that I can't. And then it would kind of be turned around on me. So I eventually built a career, and it took me a few years to get out.
So even though you were financially supporting you and your husband and your family, you still didn't feel like you could support yourself once you were out of the relationship?
There was nowhere for us to go.
Okay, you didn't have a place to go. Okay, and you couldn't kick him out?
I tried. He got very violent every time I said, I think you'd be happier somewhere else. I don't, I said, and I really meant them too, especially in the moment, because I'm like, well, maybe you'd be better with somebody that loved you more, that didn't have like all this baggage stuff where, I miss my husband that died. And he would say, I'm never going to leave you. You can't get rid of me. And, it would turn around to me being the bad guy again, which, I was a little bit, but I really just wanted out of the situation. If I talked to him about, some of the things that the kids were saying or feeling and trying to fix that situation, he would get madder and, start throwing stuff around the house and telling me that I didn't need to be listening to my kids, which is ridiculous. So I couldn't get him to leave the house. Okay. And I knew that. And even though I tried on several occasions, he just wouldn't leave. And there were no shelters around there. I didn't have the kind of family support that would give us a place to stay. And here I am with 3 kids and myself and this man that will not get out.
Wow. Okay. So it was challenging to be able to try and figure out, like physically, where do I go? And you found a place? What did you find? What finally worked?
I eventually, at one point, I was working so much. I was working an hour and a half away, and that was just, one way. So, and I was working like 60 hours a week, managing a jewelry store in a neighboring town, trying to get extra training and stuff to take a official management position. And he came to me and he's like, "You're gone all the time. I'm really lonely. I want to have an open marriage." I was devastated completely. And I cried about it for a week, and he kept pestering every single day, at least 3 times a day. Like anytime that I seen him or talked to him, he wanted to know an answer. So eventually I gave in with the hopes that, hey, maybe he'll find somebody else. Which, to be in a position where that feels like the best option was really rough. At that point, I was suicidal because I couldn't find a way out. Because believe me, I tried, and I was starting to fight back. So I started to save money, and I really invested in my career because they have a bonus system. And eventually, I put a stop to the open marriage because, here I am giving him money so he can go out on dates with other women, and I'm barely able to even see my kids.
You were paying for his dates?
Yeah.
There is something wrong with this picture. Like, all kinds of things are wrong with this picture. Okay.
Yeah, it was awful. It was really, really awful.
Okay.
And I told him at one point I gained enough strength, and I was like, okay, just a moment of courage. Even if he hits me or whatever, at least then I'll have evidence, of some of the things that he's doing. And I said, listen, you need to get a job. You are not going to keep doing this. We are ending this open relationship. You have like 3 months to work on this marriage or you're out. That's it. And I just didn't, it was so hard to find the strength to do it because he had worn me down for years. And I was working constantly, barely able to see my children. And, they're starting to face some mental health issues with that. But eventually, consistently, he started to listen. He did get a job. And when he got a job, he did find another target. And I ended up having to pay him $200 a month for a year and $5,000. And so he kept that money. But
wait, so is this like a settlement agreement, a divorce agreement, or was this just an arrangement?
It was a divorce.
Okay.
It was a divorce agreement in order to be able to get the divorce. Because I kept, as we were supposed to be working on the relationship, I kept finding him on dating sites, and people would come into me while I was at work because I was really never anywhere else. And telling me, hey, I want you to see these messages. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And because it's supposed to be an open marriage, but it wasn't really open. It was open for him. Because any time that he'd heard about me talking to anyone, and he would or anything like that, he would watch me from the parking lot looking into the store where I was working. And anytime that he saw me talking to anyone or heard that I talked to anyone, whenever I got home that night, things were really bad. And during this whole process, it never slowed down. If anything, it sped up and he got more violent. There's things that are listed in the book that I'm just trying not to say too much because, people may not have had a trigger warning, but there were times whenever I woke up in really bad situations, or, I would be trying to talk to my mother on the phone or the school on the phone or something like that, he would, push me down or throw me down, and I would be violated even with me trying to push him away.
Wow. So he used that as a tool for power, and it's such an intimate betrayal as far as your not valuing and respecting yourself and your body and your space, and that's a very, very intimate violation. So I'm sorry that you went through that and that it was so hard to get out. But I am grateful that you are out. I would like to see what made the difference. I mean, how it sounds like he has another target. That's kind of helpful for you, not really helpful for the next person. But and then did you serve him divorce papers? Did he get out? Did he sign? Did you find a place, or did he leave? I mean, what? I want out.
Yeah. He eventually signed the divorce papers whenever enough money was involved. And that sounds so horrible, but that's the way it was. That's the only chance that I had. And he wouldn't, even after I filed the paperwork and we were legally separated, he wouldn't leave until the day of the divorce. Like, we rode in the same vehicle to the courthouse and then drove back together. And then I locked myself in the bedroom while he changed the rims on his vehicle before he would leave. He wouldn't leave. So, I mean,
in a situation like that, are you allowed to get legal help and get someone to help get him out, like involve the police? It's time for you to leave because he hasn't been respecting you this whole time, so he's not going to start now.
I couldn't prove anything. It was my word against his. And so there really wasn't anything anybody could do because he wasn't like leaving bruises on me. He was at times, but like I never seemed to catch him because I still had to work. I was the manager of a pretty important business and people were like constantly calling off. So I had like virtually no opportunity, like when things were fresh, to, go to the hospital. And our hospital, we live in a really small town, and there was just not the kind of support or kind of help that we needed in this, where I'm from, because it's a very small town.
Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, so is he leaving you alone now?
He has no choice but to. I actually filed a restraining order against him.
Okay.
I tried to, right after things were happening, because he was harassing me for more and more money. And they said, okay, well, we'll send him a letter. So they sent them a letter, and he slowed down for a while, and then it started to pick up. But so I went back a couple years later, partially because I was releasing the book. If I'm being completely honest, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try again, because he was aware of everything that was happening in my family, and that wasn't cool, because he just seemed to know everywhere that I was, and he would follow me around the store. And he would stare at me and do all of these things. And it was very, very unnerving. I was just kind of waiting for him to make a move. I had screenshots of conversations for years where he said, if you say anything to anyone, I'm going to make your life living hell, and I'm going to come after you if you say any of the things that happened in our marriage.
Which now you have written a book, so how is that going to go down?
Well, I needed to write the book. It started out being, kind of just about my healing and everything. And then about halfway through, it was, I wanted to help other people. I realized, this is a tool that can really be used to kind of pull people out and see that there is a way to escape, even if it seems hopeless, that there is brighter and better things ahead for you. So I'm using a pen name. I changed his description, and it is my publisher, because it is traditionally published. It's not self-published or anything like that. So they kind of went through and made sure, and they're calling it a fictional retelling. So,
So legally you're covered. How about for retaliation from him? Because he doesn't sound like a nice person.
He's definitely not a nice person. I have considered relocation, but it's going to be a while before I can manage to do that. But I got my concealed carry permit.
Okay.
In case he tries to break into my home or do something physically.
Wow. I hope it doesn't come to that. Wow. I'm sorry for all you've gone through.
So I'm going to have to go back a little bit to kind of explain, because you mentioned, his next target, the next girl. She came to me early on he cheated on me with her, and she didn't realize it. And I didn't hold it against her. She didn't know. And I knew she didn't know. And at that time, I'm like, okay. I felt bad for her, though, because I met her. She reached out to me and she asked some questions, because rumors were flying that from my neighbors and people that she knew, that he wasn't good to me. And they had said a few things, but not a whole lot. And she's like, tell me about this. And at that time, my frame of mind was he will probably love her more, because, she is going to be capable of doing that. loving him the way he personally needs to. We just weren't a good fit. Because that's kind of the mindset, because you're still blaming yourself, because that's just kind of what they do. And, I just wanted to think the best of people. So I kind of kept that door open just in case. And I was really nice to her. And I told her that, I was like, the rumors are true. And anytime that I would go into where she worked, I would talk to her a little bit. And I really kept those doors open. There was absolutely no reason for me to be mad at her. And a couple years later, she contacts me and she tells me that she found messages where he'd been on places like Craigslist talking to men and women and sending nude pictures and talking about all the things that they were going to do together. He was talking to prostitutes, and she asked him about it because, she's like very pregnant with his child, and he throws her up against the refrigerator and leaves a huge dent in it. And that was something that just didn't stop for her. And she contacted me and she started asking some questions and stuff. And eventually, with us sharing our stories and talking, she got out, and I was able to kind of help her, realize what was really going on and get past, that narcissistic mind meld that she was in, because that's like the same thing that I went through. So that inspired me to do advocacy training.
Let's see if we can turn the page a little bit. We've been going through this trauma and this story, and I can feel, even though I didn't live it, I can feel that anxiety, that pain, that frustration, that helplessness, and it is, it hurts. It hurts. Even just listening hurts. So can we turn it so that let's look for something that is hopeful and happy, to say, okay, you're going through a horrible situation. First of all, you don't deserve this. It's not your fault. And then let's get some courage together and get out. And then getting out isn't enough. Then we have to heal. So this is a multi-step process of trying to turn our life into something that is joyful, peaceful, and we feel empowered. And nothing like that is ever going to happen again, because I'm not going to let it. So can we go kind of in that direction? What have you done to help heal and get your power back?
I'd love to, because you know what? A lot of people go through trauma and abuse. And unfortunately, it's not new. But I live such a blessed life now. Like, everything is so much better. And that was a lot of work. It was a lot of soul searching. I started journaling and really kind of going through the process. And I went to therapy. And it actually started before he left. There was a counselor that I could contact through text messaging and stuff through my employment that they offered. So I was messaging therapists every day. I was talking to people every day. I was journaling every day. And I was finding these patterns in myself because, there was a part of me that didn't recognize what was going on and didn't recognize those red flags and wasn't in the right state of mind to really understand those things. And I knew that if I was going to be able to move on and live a better life and be able to love again, because that was very important to me. I'm hopeless romantic. I wanted to love and to live the life that I wanted to lead, because I hadn't for a very long time. So I put in so much, ridiculously heavy amount of work very, very quickly. And, they say, well, you can't heal in like a year or two. If you're doing it every day, if you're really digging deep and, re-triggering yourself and examining those emotions, because I would journal, I would get triggered, I would be upset, I would journal, and I would write everything out. And then I would go back and, whenever I was in a better state of mind, and I would go back and I'd read it. And I started to see patterns. And I started asking myself why. Okay, why do I feel that way? Why did I do that? And then I would ask why again. And I would really dig in deep. And now life is completely different. I have a beautiful relationship. It's like I love more now than I ever thought I possibly could. Like, it seems so cheesy to say that, you know what, the sun is brighter. You know, the world is more beautiful because I can appreciate life in all of its beauty, and there's nothing holding me back.
I'm so glad. So I'm hearing here a couple of different things. One is you've been going through a healing process and you're putting in the work. Another thing is that you recognized places where you were accountable. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. And you've also given an example of hope that it's worth it. It's worth it. And things are better on the other side. So I appreciate those kinds of insight that it's worth it. It's worth it to get out of the yucky situation. There's something better available for you. Not just for other people who are lucky, but for you and for me too. That there's happiness available for us and that we are worthy of all of that. So I appreciate you going through these steps and being able to pull yourself out and then be an example for other people. There will be people who will resonate specifically with your story. And to see you be able to pull out and to be able to move forward, they'll say, man, Jenna did it. Jenna did it. And Jenna said that it was worth it. So maybe it's worth it for me too. So well done.
Thank you. I mean, I can't even fully express how happy I am now. I mean, I'm getting married in June. It's just
Congratulations.
Not long from now at all. And I'm so excited. And, you know, he and I had to put forth a lot of work too. He had to be very open, and there has to be a lot of communication because you're going to get triggered. But if you're willing to put forth the work and you find someone that is willing to put forth the work with you and be open to communication and help you dig through this mess, it's so worth it because I feel like living in a fairy tale. You know, I feel like Cinderella. I went through years and years and years of horrible neglect and abuse and manipulation, but now I found my Prince Charming and I'm off to marry him very soon.
Congratulations. I'm so glad that your story has a happy ending. And thank you for visiting with me today.
Thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by author Maggie Young. She said, "Abusive relationships exist because they provide enough rations of warmth, laughter, and affection to clutch onto like a security blanket in the heap of degradation. The good times are the initial euphoria that keeps addicts draining their wallets for toxic substances to inject into their veins. Scraps of love are food for an abusive relationship. If you are in an abusive relationship, I invite you to stop settling for scraps and to know that you are worthy of an abundant buffet of love, warmth, laughter, and affection." See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks, free audiobooks, and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.